Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. The title is the self inside reality? And so I want to dive into it and pretty much look at the idea that we human beings, we consider ourselves as a self. We say me, we use the word I, we all have a sort of I thought. You know, that means when you look in the mirror, you don't see just matter. You see what that matter is being contained in, which is the subjective movement of your inner realms. So the self is an fascinating idea that we constantly think we are, but when we look at it, imagine you were a materialist and you're like, where are my emotions? You know, where are my, where is my sense of self? This ego, this idea of self that we live as, where is it? Is it in the physical reality? And it is not. That was my fascination, that we have to see it to believe it, but the seer is not in sight. The seer is aware of sight. That's the wonder. That's the wonder of this life. That it's as if you're going on a whole lifetime. Every day everybody's saying hi, you know. I have been a shape only to realize that this shape is behind my eyes and in front of it, it is not a visible form. So I'm gonna let me see if I can zoom in on this a bit more. Here's what I'm saying, guys. I'm saying that I noticed that when I was born, I wasn't a personality. I wasn't a person. The mind of the newborn child, after the doctor slaps it on the back to breathe, that child is not an individual. That child's mind is being the moment. So what does that mean? The first thing that your mind learns is to be the world. How masterful. But after being the world, they say by the age of 12 to 14, 11 to 14, the child gets its own individualism. That means children, you can see, like, for example, a 12-year-old kid, or even a 15-year-old kid, you could see the child, but you know that this child doesn't have certainty with the projection of their own intelligence. That means the youth doubt themselves, you know, and they have a lot of energy, and the old don't doubt themselves, but they don't have the energy. And it's like that middle ground where the greatest work can be done. When you realize that this idea of you, this idea of yourself, every person is strangely self-obsessed, but the self is not a physical thing. Can you see that? Can you see that we're all trying to make things go right, be perfect, and all this, but that self behind our eyes, it is not an object. I am saying that the self is not, it is a part of reality, but it is not physical. The self, the idea of yourself, is not a material phenomenon. Material circumstances lead to the projection of it, but that projection is not physical. That means there is no such thing as the self. There is just an attention that knows it's there. Because it's not physical, guys. Like, the self is not like a coffee cup you can lift up. It's the idea of you as an engagement, as a response to the moment. So what do we do? What do we do as human beings that have been thinking we're just objects for a long time, suddenly realizing the subject upon the object, like right now my name is a subject. It's a really fascinating idea, I think, that our subjective existence is actually experiential, our objective existence is existential. So what does that mean? That means there is a world and the experience of existence. So we are existence experiencing itself separate from the earth, from the stars, from the galaxies. We are existence's separate modality. We are the earth experiencing itself through name, ideas, beliefs, and whatever you like. So this whole time in my life, I've been going around. People are like, be yourself, man. You know, people are like, yo, go do this, you know, you gotta be the self, you gotta do that, only for me to realize that my attention is keeping me alive to me. The attention to me is you. What I mean by that is that the attention to your sense of how you are calling yourself a me, M-E, like me. Not me, not the listener. I'm saying like every person says, are you talking to me? That me is so abstract. That me is so rooted in a position of just attention. Chat section's like double lol, you know? I'm just saying that the self, I shouldn't say inside reality, guys. The title should be, is the self in reality? I mean, inside reality could be a totally different thing. I'm going to change it, is the self in reality? Okay, whatever, inside reality. So what do we do? What do we do with this awareness? We're like a human being and we're like, oh man, you know, I'm not just an object. I'm like a thought, but this thought chooses the object. The object doesn't necessarily choose the thought. I mean, to some degree, it's like a double-edged sword, where when you look in the mirror, I mean, your body, your DNA is your DNA. What you going to do? It's like your existence, right? But how the meaning of all sensory perception, in some sense, formulates as a self-governing point of attention, that is the uniqueness of it, really. I've looked at materialism and a material my whole life. I looked at the matter. Guys, being human says a point where definitely Vedanta pushes down your throat when you really look at it. That funny, so being human says an interesting comment, guys. He says, funny is when people say my mind, my body, my thought, my etc. No one ever talks about the my. Exactly. And that my is conditional. I have looked at free will and I'm like, wait a minute, how could I have free will before I was an individual, before I was a being, before I was something? How could there be something to do? Do you know? Exactly. Our ownership of physicality is abstract. We own objects as subjects, but the subject is nothing you can own. It's just an appearance. It's the magnificent optical illusion of the individual. What does that mean? That means individual consciousness in a collective system will seem like an illusion as long as it's individual. It's kind of like the way we're talking about, that I find the ancient yogis, the way they saw that physical reality was something to renounce, was something to let go, they saw life as a dream they needed to wake up from. That's how the yogis saw it. But I'm telling you, it's as if you're waking up from a dream only to see you're the one dreaming. You're the one setting the dream in motion. I can't tell you that I thought only my physical activity was my responsibility. There was this talk that Sadhguru gave years ago, which was revolutionary for me. He said, the content of your mind is not your choice. That means literally if somebody comes and says, like, monkey, you're going to imagine a monkey. The sound's going to enter your ears. You can't close your ears. Do you know? So many things in this life, there is no filter on it. You're just experiencing phenomena. It's like the ears can't like the mouth close. Isn't that strange, guys? You know? You can close your nostrils to some degree. You can't completely shut them. But in substance, you can't close your ears. You know? You can close your mouth in some sense. You know? But you can't close your ears. That means speech, you have free will. But you don't have a free will in regards to what you listen to. Do you see what I'm saying? So I'm saying Sadhguru came and said the content of your mind is not your choice. That means that kid feeling bad that day, feeling, oh man, why life are you so tough, you know? So like those people who think you're unlucky. No, you're not unlucky, but you know how to tell a bad story to yourself. So I'm saying the content of your mind is not your choice, but there is choice. It's just that choice and that free will appears conditionally. That means in my conscious waking state, yes, I'm a physical being that moves, and as I move, my inner realms simulate. My inner realms are evoked. But in my dream state, I am the mind moving the world. I am the mind moving the world. I am the mind moving the body in the dream state. I've had dreams where literally I've had a body in the dream and I've moved. I remember one dream I had. I was running so fast in it, and I was conscious. You know, in reality, I have sport asthma. What that means is I'm like an incredibly fast runner, just a very fast person, but only for 20 minutes. You know? So Calvin in the chat section, I would appreciate it if you could rewrite your question. Just rephrase it. Guys, imagination is, I am telling you, don't go looking for imagination. You know, it's not that curiosity killed the cat, it's that the cat got killed when it went towards what it was curious about. You know? It's like an alien being like, yo, what's this, you know, nuclear bomb that human beings made? Let me check it out. That alien's not gonna be too intelligent if it does. So you see, some doors you don't need to open. It's like opening the door and there's someone there, you know? Okay, guys, Calvin asks a very interesting question. Calvin says, what's the difference between choice and decision? Interesting question. I think the choice is before you've made the decision. A choice is your options, the decision is the option you take. A decision is literally like, imagine somebody brought a hand, like the movie Armageddon, they were pulling straws at the end of it to see who stays. Do you know? So your choices are your inner realm, your decisions are your outer realm. Right now as I'm speaking, for example, for this talk, I'll give you an example. I had a choice. I wanted to speak either about some sci-fi predestination of the human being, or I wanted to speak about, like, I chose, there were options. The mind is the multidimensional part of reality, guys. The mind is the multidimensional factor. It's the multidimensional variable. You know, that means you see a bunch of things and then your decision becomes the choice, right? So the decisions I've made, those have been the keys I've put in the lock, but the choices have been being aware of the keychain before putting the keys in the lock. You know, so I would distinguish it between that. There will come a time where choice and decision will be inseparable, and that happens through meditation, where Swami Krishnananda, this very remarkable yogi, he said it very well. He said, Swami Krishnananda said Swami Krishnananda said meditation. All those people in the world listening to this, you who are drawn to meditation, did you know there's a time meditation stops? You don't have to meditate at the end of time, the way the Vedics, the yogis spoke about meditation. Because meditation wasn't you being a perfect robot in the eyes of some, you know, and more advanced robot. You know, the guru's like, good job, disciple, you did it. It's not like that. It's that you're alive, and there is an unknown depth to this life. And if you don't move, who else can see what your eyes have to reveal? Do you see? It's the strength of accepting yourself and seeing where it goes, right? I can't tell you, I find innovation and novelty and creativity, it actually comes from the decision state. I am telling you, there's an advantage to the choice and there's an advantage to the decision. The advantage to the choice is that your mind is getting a semi-experience of all the potentials. That means when you asked me this question, my mind was like, it was moving at different degrees. But when I choose, this is the power of a decision. And this is the power of a decision that is trusted. That means if you trust your movement, you get to see its greatest version. If you distrust your movement, if you right now feel you're more inefficient than efficient, then you have your decision limits your future choices. Your external decision can limit your inner choice. But my view is that the self is not an object. And we have just been treating it like an object. We've been trying to understand it like an object. Anything that's not an object, we're like, no, I can't see it to believe it. You want me to see hope? Bro, hope is... it's kind of like Bodhidharma, the Zen patriarch, once asked. This guy, bewildered guy, came to him to this... Bodhidharma's the fifth patriarch of Buddhism. He's pretty much that guy who took Buddhism to Japan. And this guy comes up to him. And he says, Bodhidharma, help me. Bodhidharma is in some intense samadhi. Long story short, the Zen story is a bit savage. In the Zen story, the man goes to Bodhidharma, Bodhidharma, please help me. Bodhidharma is in samadhi stage or something. The guy cuts his hand. Literally, it's savage, the Zen story. The guy cuts his hand. And strangely, hand in hand, looks at Bodhidharma and says, Bodhidharma, I am loyal to you. My mind is destroying itself. Please pacify my mind. Please pacify this restless mind. As if there's a monster inside. How do I get rid of it? And Bodhidharma suddenly awakens from his samadhi, steps as an individual and says, okay, I will handle this problem. And again, the guy says, so first Bodhidharma's like, what's the problem? The guy's like, please pacify my mind. My mind is restless. The guy hasn't slept. Literally, his inner problem is more than his outer problem. So he has started not to care for his outer realms, And that's dangerous. When you see someone not caring for their outer realms, that means their inner realms could be a valuation of 0 or minus. Okay? And what does that mean? That means the world has convinced them they are weak before they are strong. But it's a choice. And so, in that moment, Bodhidharma asks the questions. The question of all questions. He says, bring your mind in front of me right now. Bring your mind in front of me and I will pacify this mind. I will give you the ultimate peace. But bring your mind in front of me. And the man in that instant is shocked. He goes into this inner introspection and he suddenly is like, where's my mind? Bodhidharma is telling me I got to bring my mind right now. He's going to heal it. And the man notices he can't find his mind. He doesn't have the hands to hold his mind. The mind was never an object. It was not even a subject. And he looks at Bodhidharma and he says, Bodhidharma, I can't find this mind. He's freaking out. And Bodhidharma shouts at him, as if the whole cosmos is commanding him. And he says, there. Your mind is pacified. And this person sees that his inner suffering never existed. That in every moment you can be inefficient. There is a vision of efficiency. Even in economics will tell you there's an opportunity cost. And what is action? It is a decision. So when you honor your own choice, your decisions become glorious. Because most people don't realize you're in this once. Every day happens once. Every day I remain silent. Nothing is left for tomorrow. And so it's this strange thing that why are human beings here? That man who Bodhidharma said there, your mind is pacified, he meant literally your problem didn't exist. Not that you needed to search for eons for a special answer. When you realize there is no greater freedom than the free will, then the skies open behind your eyes. Then you see why man is here. Not to just be a color in the world, but to color the world. Your mind is the most advanced technology bestowed to you. Our species is literally, look at it. The human species is so ridiculously more advanced. Way more ridiculously advanced than other species. What is this advancement? Why are we aware that we will end, but many animals in nature, they say this, scholars say this, that what separates us from them is that they are not aware of their mortality. That animal doesn't have a sense of time. That lion doesn't wear a watch and then at a certain time go hunt the gazelle. Most animals, they are their ecosystem. So it is very fair to say that the human being was being programmed by the environment, but something happened that it saw more than the environment and it decided to create its own environment. So when, for example, you hear Jordan Peterson, Slavoj Žižek and Jordan Peterson kind of go and debate and speak, Slavoj Žižek, he's looking at this conservative Marxist, he's looking at Jordan Peterson and he's saying, Mr. Jordan Peterson. And Jordan Peterson, guys, he's a tidal wave. He was a tidal wave in secular culture, you know. And Jordan Peterson is constantly telling people you gotta attend the individual dimension. You gotta start from cleaning your room, then go into cleaning the world. If you can't clean your room, you can't do anything. Not that you can't do anything, but you gotta handle the small fish to then get to the big fish, you know? Kind of like a game, you know, like in a video game when you play against the opponent, whether it's an online video game or whether it's just the map of the video game, you're most likely what the situation is this video game character goes in a setting where it will be under attack. And it will be under attack by multiple opponents. And what the strategy is you get rid of the small attackers because less energy you need to use to defeat them. But then you get to the big attacker. Or the option is you go straight for the big attacker, get rid of the main damage, and then get rid of the smaller one. Now this is the same thing as being implemented in business and psychology, everything. We think patterns behind our eyes are multidimensional. In front of our eyes, they appear in the limits of a singular dimension. That means we look at the space-time continuum and we say this is three-dimensional space. It's as if we forgot about the 2D. We forgot about the two-dimensional so easily. We're like, it's just 3D, bro. You know, it's as if we found the bigger onion layer, right? 2-dimension is like the smaller onion, or like a Russian doll, like, you know. For me, it's an incredible observation that everything that man knows is hovering in the middle of nowhere. And some people are going to be like, you know, what does that mean? Does that mean life has no purpose? No. It's like asking what is the purpose of an empty piece of paper when there's a pen in your hand. The pen is the biological existence. It's the physical opportunity. The mind is so much more multidimensional than the body because the mind experiences different phases of itself. The mind, the Ribu Gita tells us that there's 4 states, but usually there's 3 main. These 3 main are the conscious waking state again, the dream state, and the deep sleep state. Now, many gurus who people came and asked them questions, they were like, hey buddy, you asking me all these questions about suffering and truth and all this. In deep sleep, are you suffering? In deep sleep, are you in pain? In deep sleep, is there a story to the world? In deep sleep, is there a self? And the yogis said that there was a 4th state, the witness. The witness was the awareness to the various modes of the self. So you experience yourself in conscious waking state. Right now, I'm talking to you in the conscious waking state. Let's have a round of applause for everyone in the conscious waking state. You know, but in the dream state, the permission is different. In dream states, I've experienced the death of mind-projected bodies. I've experienced my own death in my dream. Bunch of times. I've literally died in my dreams, guys. You know? So, and you know, the yogis were like, life's a dream, and I'm like, alright, so there's just gonna be another one, you know? But what it is it's just an empty-handedness. I will tell you, there comes an empty-handedness in the archetype before the last breath that realizes it is all leaving. And so the strongest skill is not physical. The strongest sign of character is the endurance of the attributeless watcher. I think it was like 6 months ago, guys, maybe even more, I got an experience. I got an experience that was the most intense experience. It was what I felt. It wasn't anything too dangerous. Like I wasn't in a physically dangerous situation. But I was in a situation where there was an event occurring, that a personal event. When I say personal, like something was happening that it had I don't want to say terrified me. Fear, there's two options. When fear comes, either you handle it or you don't handle it and you have to just confront the fear in the room. What does that mean? That means the fear just chews at you when you don't confront it, and you can't really do much. You know? And so it's like after that fear, the fear finishes, then the person gets pushed to a state of anguish. Okay? And so I got pushed into this state of anguish where I was just standing somewhere in the crossroad, but there was some situation that was happening which I can't mention, but there was something happening that I literally, and not something spiritual or anything, something physical, like something event-wise was happening, that I literally felt this wind in my inner realms, and I felt the most naked as a being I have ever felt. More naked than as if that feeling when you see an avalanche. I saw an avalanche of physical worth in that moment. I experienced an avalanche of suddenly void. It was as if like this book you've spent your whole life writing, suddenly one day you opened it and see it's empty. Or this whole book you've spent your whole life trying to find, you find it and you see it's empty. And you're like, what was the purpose of this empty book? And you realize the purpose was for you to write it. So let me tell you what mysticism is going to end up being. It's going to end up for people being as if this quest for finding this sacred book of wisdom, only for them to realize the pages are blank, because you are here to write your life into existence, into experience. I found it very strange. Materialistic perspective, it is necessary. I am in no way advocating a metaphysics that's like, bye physics. You know, I'm not saying goodbye to physics. I'm saying that we should think of it, instead of instantly jumping to the supernatural or to the abstract, we should first be like, all right, what do we get out of the physical? Imagine you were a being, a multidimensional being, and on an island in space. Now, this multidimensional being has to acknowledge the tools of each dimension of its perception. So that means when I'm thinking of a strategy to my own living, like when somebody says, "How do you live?" That's it. That's first of all one of the most ultimate questions. But it's also a question that the answer belongs to how your eyes are planting seeds in this world. Our inner lives is a life. Literally, it's an application. Literally, your experience of a physical reality is a program on the phone that's running. And literally, your experience of the space where reality occurs is a program. And I am telling you, don't expect this world to see you as you see yourself. It is very rare. It is very rare. I mean, I have a twin brother, and I would consider, out of all the human beings in this world, he can really see who I am. Do you know? Guys, feel free to ask as many questions you want in this chat section. The point of these being live stream is, I'm like, all right, I could either give these talks in solitude, or I could just, open it up to the world. So anybody can ask a question and I will share my view. Because really that's what we can do, In a changing world, truth is more than an image, more than a sound, more than a word. For me, sentences is like a song. I mean, look at it. When somebody sings, all right, it's like a belief, All right, guys. So Another question finds us. Alright, so Calvin says, how do I find a way to balance being active in the world and still being aware? Okay, let me tell you what I think is going on. So you know how synchronicity is a pattern, guys? Synchronicity, like those people thinking, call Jungian synchronicity, people feeling like their inner realms are synchronized with the outer realm, so the outer realm event feels like an inner realm intuition, right? So it's kind of like a phase after synchronicity. The phase after that, those people seeing synchronicity, is what it is first your mind is having an outside relationship with you because you don't trust it. Then your mind has a relationship with you where you notice the inseparability of the individual activity and the cosmic activity. So that phase means all those people who got past the synchronicity stage, okay, they're going to now be in the witness state. They're going to feel like, how can I tell you, you find yourself in a gentler resonance, but you still have no self. The issue is, it's like most people see beyond themselves, but they don't know what to do after. They think, what happened? You know, I reached the ultimate oneness and I'm still here. So let me tell you what happens after. People think meditation is to find a secret heaven. They think meditation is to find an ultimate state. For Mr. Within, let me tell you my experience. I'm just one person. My experience of yoga goes to this far. That union is actual. There is an experience in yoga that makes you not have a view of a person on the moment. Okay? But the issue, it's not an issue. It's the idea is you're being taken back to the void. Right? So it's like this. You opened your eyes suddenly. You don't, even though we're physically born, but subjectively we're not born. We awaken in our life. We awaken in our individualism. You're not born as an individual. Okay? So what happens is you are this phenomena. You don't know what it is. Meditation makes you observe it, you find what it is, but the observer is attributeless. So then you become an ultra-passive nature lover. Okay? That ultra-passivity is advanced. Don't take that wrong. But that passivity is, let me tell you, it's like this. Think right now I'm a numerical value. Meditation made me realize I'm zero. Now I realize I can be any value. The point of it is freedom of expression. You first have to stop doing what you're not aware of, and then it doesn't mean you should never do anything. It just because mysticism says you got to get rid of the ego, the algorithm is to get rid of the ego, you know, doesn't mean you should never have an ego after that. Doesn't mean every room you should go, you should be just this blissful, saintly energy. It's a technology. Literally, you don't use your phone 24/7. You don't need to have an ego 24/7. In doing certain actions, you do need to project some sort of individualism. Do you know that means I can't give this talk if I feel like if I don't feel like I'm an individual. The idea is that you return to a state before limitation, interpretations of the limitation and the limitless existed. Before your best and worst sense of self could exist, there's just a moment there. The simplicity of that moment is the origin of all complexity. So meditation is kind of like, dude, you're living complex, a little bit simpler. When you live simpler, you see what you are. Then you can be complex differently. How hilarious is it that we're creatures in this world, but all our future wants to be to get out of it? You know? There's a beauty to this world. This world doesn't speak through voices to you, it speaks through events. The events happening on the surface of the planet is kind of the strange song the planet is singing. So I am telling you, you have to in some sense notice this, guys. At least this is what I'm saying. I'm saying that you are a thought in the void. And this thought in the void is dictating the outcome. But I'm telling you, you're the void that is watching the thought. The thoughts come and go. So when the thoughts come and go, what mask do you want? What mask can an endless universe give you? An endless changing universe. What identity do you want? When I look at myself when I was young, I am not the same person as I was 20 years ago. I'm not the same being. I don't have the same attention. I don't have the same value system. So if your value system is changing, how can you find a technique? How can you find an outcome, a result? Right? So we have to usher ourselves in a new way. Here's the issue. We are like aware. I feel most people, they can watch themselves. And those people who can't watch themselves, they can't distinguish between their inner realm and outer realm. And that's when savageness and chaos is thrown into the world. No. Calvin, I would say it's like, Calvin says, is it like being an actor full-time? No. It's no longer seeing actor and no longer seeing world where you're acting in. No longer there's actor and stage. There is a realization that things have beginnings. The beginnings are neutral in value until the first step. Do you know? I don't know if it was Buddha or something. He said something. You're not an actor full time. In deep sleep, you're not an actor. You can't be an actor. Somebody comes and says something to you, it will change the script. So what that means is, literally, if AI in the future was looking at humans, he'd be like, "Yo, man, these humans ain't different than me. They, in some sense, I have a binary language I speak. These human beings speak a sort of, what do you call it? Language is the code in their head, you know." I mean, on some level, guys, we can't ignore the quote that says, what does a monk do before enlightenment? Chop wood, carry water. What does a monk do after enlightenment? Chop wood, carry water. So it's not a physical thing, okay? So if you have a physical view, on your mind, which is changing, it's like you trying to define a river. You see? You know, it's like trying to define a river. Can you really? Imagine your mind is a river right now. It's not static. It's not a painting on a wall. It's not like getting a cup and getting a cup of that river, teacup full of that river, and being like, yo, I got the river, a whole river in a teacup. It's impossible. Every belief, every idea, it is literally like a cup of river water. It's not the river. It's just the cup. It's how we have held things so far. So for me, that's why I'm saying living for the inner realms, it's necessary, but you can't just live for your inner realms because you see the outcome. That moment where there's choice before the decision, that choice is you're seeing the outcome. That means most people, they can close their eyes. Literally, you can do this. Anything you want in this life, any desire you have, literally the mind has an ability you can close your eyes and imagine it. You can imagine it. I close my eyes and sometimes try to imagine how these philosophers lived, you know? And what is that? In my mind, I get to experience the semi-tangible, that means only in design. The mind touches through sight. The body touches physically, like you gotta touch something. So when you realize, I'm telling you, imagine one day you see all the beliefs you have in one moment. It's just how the moment is moving. What if every word and sound and everything we have ever said is just an occurrence? It's just a simple occurrence. And they're like, what is the meaning of life? You're like, its meaning is that it's just happening. It's going forth. It's growing, and it's like experience allows a conscious view of change, of existential change. That means what I consider to be beauty, it's again not physical. Every girl that I've seen that I've suddenly fallen in love with, especially in my youth, it would be that love was not physical. That love was a potential in the mind. And based on our decisions, it becomes actualized. So that means Do you know, there was something I realized. My decisions are my life. My decisions are what my life will become. And there was a time, guys, that I looked at my physical body and I noticed that at some point this is going to go. My body is going to leave me perhaps earlier than my mind wants to leave the world. And when I looked at that, I saluted. I might be one of those rare people who salutes his biological cells. I saluted every cell of my existence. I saluted it. And I'm like, I honor that which I am being. Because where else can honor me? It is how we are that sometimes suggests what we will be. Life pulls people in so many directions that it's like, just look at your own life. How many random variables changed who you are now? So, guys, the chat section is rolling. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, imagination is like, Calvin, you're in the chat section. I'm going to respond to you. Like, your imagination is, how would I say it? Your imagination is a second life. It's a hidden life. It is where you can't be dishonest with your inner realms. You can be dishonest with your outer realms because your outer realms don't see your inner realms. Like, you could be a person and come and talk to me in a very nice way, but maybe you're a person who doesn't, when I speak, you don't feel it's nice. You know? Like, it could be totally, I'm just telling you, just think of it this way. Just like a multiplayer online video game gives you access to a character that is in the same world as other characters. Like, you could be in Japan playing this online game, and you could be in like America playing this online game, and you would both be in the same virtual cyberspace map. So I came and saw that language is that. Beliefs are that. When you see a bunch of people having the same belief, you're like, nice, these guys are in the same server. They're in the same language server. You know, they're in the same belief server. So just like that multiplayer online video game, your inner realms is the person sitting behind the computer screen. Nobody in the video game can see how you're moving, how you're clicking the mouse buttons, how you're clicking the keyboard buttons, how you're moving the mouse. Nobody can see it, but you are in the same map as everyone else. So physical existence, when we wake up in the morning, it's like we've entered a video game. And it's like, in this video game, we are a character with everyone, but everybody's mind is hidden unless they choose to speak about it. So I'm telling you, in front of your eyes, physical video game, everybody is a character inside that. Individual consciousness is relevant. But behind your eyes, if I imagine something right now, if I don't vocalize it, you can't see it. So that's what I'm saying. Your imagination is your private room where you have access to the design of anything you evoke, but you can't touch it. Like, I can imagine like a cold iced tea bottle, but I can't grab that iced tea bottle. I can imagine it in the room right now, but I can't grab that and start drinking that iced tea bottle. So it has design. It's visible, but it's not tangible. So your imagination comes across as your subtler planes. It's like your ears in a different dimension. Your senses echoing in the different dimensional framework. So here's the argument for multidimensionality. I need paper for this. Hang on, guys. If they ask Mr. Within, like, what is the most powerful force in existence? I would say, I'm going to tell you the second most powerful than the first. The second most powerful is sight, is seeing. Seeing is like the ultimate power. That means if you enter a room and you see more than the others, you have power. That's why people go get educated. So when they go in the competitive economical gladiator arena, you know, the employer, like a Greek emperor, can put the thumbs up, thumbs down based on how alert and aware the employee is. You know. So before I tell you this argument on multidimensionality, I'm going to make a note, but I'm going to tell you an experience I had that I'm telling you. Okay, the first thing beyond seeing is trusting. Trust is unknown, it's divine, there's no meaning for it, there's no explanation for it, but trust is the most unique thing. That means that's natural. What's normal is not to trust your environment. But trust is ushering in, trust is as if you trust only it can be there if there is a firm inner footing in a higher potential. That means I trust myself when I see something is possible. The moment that I see impossibility, I can't trust myself. I can hope, but the hope is a belief on the future. Trust comes from attention's. Trust is the pure dimension of attention. Seeing is the impure dimension. I don't want to say impure, but like you got to understand, we are multidimensional beings, and we're conditioned in a society that says everything is just in material. It's just atoms. Okay, it's not just atoms. There's something else moving here. But we now are trying to wonder: is that thing that's moving here, that's more than atoms? Is it just conditional? Or is it multidimensional? So now I can go to the argument of the multidimensional. The argument of the multidimensional, this is Mr. Within's kind of view. So you have a self and you have a world. Let's not consider mystical enlightenment yet. You're just a self in a world. This is basic. Everybody appears as a self in a world. So there's a self and a world. I want people to just consider this basic model, all right? Every person, there is self and a world. Now, here's the multidimensionality. The self can be known and it can be unknown, and the world can be known and it can be unknown. Take this in. You know what that means? That means you can be a known self in an unknown world. You can be an unknown self in a known world. There's so many variations of psychological, how psychology opens up like a lotus, you know? So this multidimensional view would mean either yourself is multidimensional or your world. Our world is being, the way our society, a Western society, which is really, let me tell you, for me it became obvious, technology is the definer, That means any civilization that's any nation that's technologically advanced, their ideologies are more around the world, I think. So anyways, you're a self in a world. Now let's look at these two options. First, we think the world is a singular dimension. We think if the self is multidimensional. And then the other option would be thinking the self is singular and the world is multidimensional. Religious people feel the self is singular, the world is multidimensional. So they don't really care about soul, they're just trying to go to a better world. Okay? The spiritual people feel the self is multidimensional, the world is singular. The world is a dream, the self is the awakening. You know, so the self is the true nature. So you can say Vedic wisdom, polytheistic traditions, the self was multidimensional, so they saw multiple variations of the self being evoked. For religious monotheistic traditions, the world was multidimensional, the self was singular. Even though they acknowledge the soul, you go ask any religious person what is the soul, and they would say it's a secret and mystery of God. Because technically, to the religious person, the whole world is the movement of a will, of an intelligence that is beyond the conceivable world. So that's what God means. Like, as a kid, I was like, God? All right. What is this God? What is the definition of it? And the definition of it is literally like everything and nothing simultaneously. That means because God is everything, nothing technically is a part of everything, you know? That's an interesting question. So guys, interesting comment. Being human says, when it boils right down to it, all experience takes place in the infinite mind, therefore all experience is illusion. To wrap your head around that. So interesting. You know what that means? That's another way I've heard the same argument, which is, why does an eternal being need to live? Why does an eternal being need to survive? Why does an eternal being need to incarnate? If you're an eternal being, why do you need to be an individual? So your comment, being human, guys, when I say being human, like, that's the name of this user in the chat section, okay? People might not realize what I mean when I say being human. Like, that's the name of the... Swami Krishnananda said religion is God remembering himself. That means religion is not an individual being. There's never people in religion. People are like the thoughts in the mind of a higher dimensional, inconceivable position, right? So there's one view where we think we ascended. That's evolution. You were a dirt, and now you are moving on the dirt. You right now you're dirt walking on dirt before you were dirt. That's the ascension view. But religion, strangely, I always wondered about it, and it has this self-awareness mechanism through sin. So when you look at it from a religious context, I was like raised in a part of the world where the first wave of information that hit me was, for example, Shia Islam. Why? Because I was born in Iran and the government is theocratical, and just it's kind of like you have to be aware of it, like being aware of numbers, religion in certain religious states. There is like, you have to be aware of the religion. It's like numbers. It's like memorizing the alphabet. You know, you got to know the religious events. You got to know religious significance. So when I'm in Iran, for example, it becomes a situation where, how would I say it? Like, you know, the Japanese have a saying. They say the man is the room he's in. That technically means the different rooms we enter, we're different versions of ourselves. So technically, people who've fallen in love with each other, they've fallen in love with each other's moments. Because the self changes all the time. Guys, I'm listening to like this music in the background that sounds like Robin Hood, like helping the poor, you know? Literally, if that could be in music. If the self is multidimensional, your inner realms must be piloted. If the world is multidimensional, the outer realms should be piloted. And I am telling you, dear listeners, this distinction I'm telling you between the self being multidimensional and the world being multidimensional, there's 4 variations. And I feel all human ideology falls into this. Every living human being you see, I feel this model I've kind of come up with here is in some sense an ultimate explanation. And I may be too bold, and I may be a fool, and in the future I may be corrected, but I welcome all of that. The attempt now must be made. Some ideas just must be shared. So, self world, you are oscillating between being a self in a world and being the world moving the self. Now, if the self is multidimensional, and if the world is multidimensional, what are the options? Okay, let me tell you. It's a list here, I gotta do it. Self and world, okay? We have, in some sense, the self being multidimensional and the world being singular. We have the self being singular and the world being multidimensional. We have the... I need more paper. We have... So here's the variations. I'm just drawing... Okay, guys, let me just draw this so I can just post the picture for people. So, guys, this is a perfect time to ask questions while I draw this. Guys, I don't know if being human is talking about me, but these talks, trust me, I don't care that much to block people. Do you know? So I don't know. The only time I've blocked a comment is when the comment has been so savage that I felt maybe like this person is gonna feel guilty after saying some, like, you know. But anyway. So anyways, guys, what I'm drawing for you is this chart, okay? And this chart is an attempt to try to explain all the ways human psychology is existing or can exist. And it's a very bold claim, and, you know, I'm encouraging people to prove me wrong or update the model. But here, I'm gonna draw it here. I'm just drawing this, guys. Hang in there. I think I got all of it. I'm gonna create an extra section here. Alright, so the next option would be, I'm gonna just put void. Oh yeah, here. All right, here. I'm gonna. Ah, shit. I don't have my phone. Guys, I just wasted time because there's no way actually I can show you this. Yo, chat section's getting out of control. Guys, honestly, I think this should be clarified. Only listen to these talks if you can notice them being a mirror in regards to how your experiences color the meaning of the words. On some level, it's like, I don't know, people, of course, it makes sense. Human beings are the most interesting thing here on this planet, after gadgets and technology and whatever. But the thing is that the human being is realizing it is not just an object or subject. So right now we are in the most important era to, in some sense, build a new behavior, a new model for the behavior of civilization. Not that behavior has to be limited. You see, when you look at the past, multidimensionality wasn't allowed. By the way, guys, I can't send this what I've drawn. So I finished drawing it, but I can't send it. Pretty much it's a chart showing the options of the self and the world. So I'll just read it for you. There can be a multidimensional self. There can be a singular world. There can be a multidimensional self. There can be a multidimensional world. There can be a singular self. There can be a singular world. There can be a singular self, and there could be a multidimensional world. Okay, so we're pretty much seeing the dance of the world and the self, and kinda it's the wisdom falls in parallel with what Shirin Sarvilat Maharaj said, that when I see that I am nothing, that is wisdom. When I see that I am everything, that is love. And in between, my life moves. That means this human being evolved from an object, suddenly thinking he's a subject, to recognizing that the experience of the subject and the experience of the object is an oscillation between two states. That we were more multidimensional than we could ever speak of. That our eyes are rooted at the core of energy being instantly conscious of itself. Honestly, I think there's going to be an archaic revival of, think about it. The system gets complex. If it's too complex to handle, it just regresses back into simplicity. So everything in life you try, something changes, but it can also reverse. So if you are a human being that is comfortable with the mathematical notion that through mathematical language, time can move backwards. So what does that mean? That means you as a being have a sort of engineer's urge just built into you as the human being, where you look at something and you wonder, what else? It's like you look at empty space, and you look at an empty room, and your mind wonders about the furniture that could be there. That's the engineer's urge. Then there's the reverse engineering urge. The reverse engineering urge is when you look at an empty room and you question why emptiness is there. But the engineering way is, it's like, what can be in emptiness? Sorry guys, this was on mute and I was saying the most epic things, Jesus. I was just saying, pretty much, is the self inside reality, or is reality inside the self? And there was a time, there was a phase in history where it was pre-time, and there was a phase in history that was after time, right? So me and you have opened our eyes during your point in history where it's in time. Okay, and what is time? That means when we wonder about the self inside reality, reality is being considered a space, matter in space, and then the way this matter changes in accordance how the individual holds itself is literally time changing, right? So it's kind of like the world needs to have something to relate to if you want to change in the world. So the concept of growth is that there was a version of you and then there will be another version of you. Kind of like how Lao Tzu says you got to let go of who you are now to be who you're meant to be, something like that. So guys, I can't really say your username, but I think it's Imbranardi, I don't know. Imnardi. So, alright guys, let's bring this talk to a full circle. Quick response to the question from Randy. I'll just call you Randy. Materialism is less than meta-realism, which is less than metamorphosis. Right, so the unknown is greater than matter. Then you say materialism is less than matter, okay, same thing, and then metallic. So somehow from metamorphosis you came to the metallic. What is your description for 60? Interesting. The 60 doesn't have a description. I take it this way, guys. This is how I would explain. This is Mr. Within's explanation of the sixth dimension, if I had to. So here's what it is. I consider till the fourth dimension with a sort of abidance with a science. So I consider the fourth dimension as time, because it makes perfect sense, right? That means if you go, like, let's say you enter a room and then you step out of the room and you enter it in the room again, what separates those two times that you entered the same room is time. Time is like the fourth dimension that makes us distinguish between two different three-dimensional occurrences. Okay? So time is the fourth dimension. Now you, Randy, in the chat section, you're asking about the sixth dimension. So let's go from time. So you can say observing two different physical spaces, time is the difference, time is the dimension, right? Now that would mean you need to experience two simultaneous moments in time. So you have to observe two times in the same moment. That's the fifth dimensional experience. Now what Mr. Within is saying, the only way you experience more than one, the way you experience two four-dimensional moments is the fifth dimensional moment. But that fifth dimensional moment, anytime we move beyond time, we're not a concept. So that's what I'm saying. Beyond the fourth dimension, there is no time. The fifth dimension has nothing to do with time. Time is in the fifth dimension. It's an onion-style multidimensionality, I feel. Just intuitively, I feel the world is, it's kind of spherically, it's like a bunch, it's like the world has a mind and a soul. But they are not concepts, they're living moments. It's probably like that moment where Jack and the Beanstalk, he was around the giant and he's like, oh my god, they exist. And then he suddenly grabs onto like the shirt of the giant. That wonder, you know, it's like the world is not per se only comprehensible. its greatest value comes from experience. And it's kind of like this. I mean, honestly, you ask for someone, it's like, to some degree, we're all adults here. It's like, it's like, would you rather just visualize sex or would you rather have it? You know what I mean? So it's like the same thing with mysticism. I don't want to say it's sex, but I'm saying it's like, would you rather want to experience something? Do you want to experience piloting like an advanced spacecraft, or do you want to just like imagine it? Yeah, nice. The mind is strange because the moment we take the dimension out of time, we become ageless. So the sixth dimension, the fifth dimension, these are not relevant to you as long as you're a personality. They become relevant to you when you appear to yourself as a process of phenomena that the individual, the micro and the macro are no longer separate. It's like you get the fractal teaching. You realize why Plato said as above, so below. That means the above and the below are man-made. But what's happening is happening. Alright guys, I don't know how good the quality of this picture is going to be, but this is a mythological kind of depiction of Arash the Kamangi, the Persian mythological archer I was talking about. Back in the day, reality had a multidimensionality to it, so people were not just inspired by, like, think about the psychology of a world of gods. Right now, it's so easy, there's no, like, we can totally see it. Let's start from the secular. Let's imagine we are an atheist, okay? In some sense, we feel that there is only us here, in the sense that man is like, to fathom higher beings among us is like an error, right? It seems to be a rational error from the atheistic perspective, okay? The theistic perspective, atheism, theism, those are just archaic words for me, both of them. They're just like, you're wearing jerseys of a changing system. I mean, really, it's like, what side can you take of a changing world? Like, is there really a dark side of the moon when the moon rotates? No, there's just darkness and the moon just rotates. There's no dark side to the moon. The dark side to the moon is every part of the moon. That means it's like, technically the dark side should be, as the moon has been spinning, should be endlessly revealed. The moon is not a non-spinning object. It's not static. So a static system can't be defined. There's no dark side of the moon because literally that side is on endlessly spinning. There is a life that the mind is living, but it's unknown, and at most it will be experienced as a rhythm. So let's just say there's egos. Now, what happens to this ego? Well, if one clue we have is in deep sleep, you could be the most evil person, but in deep sleep, you're nothing. Okay? Not that you're nothing, but I'm saying like there's nothing. That means nobody can judge you in your deep sleep. Nobody is even in deep sleep there. So we can say deep sleep, 1/3 of human life, which goes to sleep, is literally the non-existence of the subjective realm. So we are no stranger to the lights going out. But we are a stranger to the lights no longer turning back on. Like that's what the significance of death, for example, the word death. Wonder, the unknown. The unknown is being forgotten. The one thing that for me, in my youth, I don't know how to tell you guys, like, I always saw a life to nature. It wasn't like the trees were alive, it was like the moment was alive. I thought there was an edge to knowledge, only to realize the sky can't be measured with any ruler. We can't measure the sky. Some things we gotta accept that they are too big for our eyes. So the sixth dimension, if a being in the sixth dimension, I would say, would be a being that is not a concept anymore. What does that mean? That means you are permission. So many people don't talk about this, but they're like, think of life, think of energy as being something that can't be created or destroyed, but it just changes, right? So we say life, in science, there's potential energy and it's becoming kinetic. This talk was potential, then I spoke and it became kinetic, okay? So I was thinking that then what if energy was just a conscious activity? What if energy was conscious? So it didn't matter what form the energy came through. It didn't matter what it appeared like. What if energy just was aware of itself? What if the quality of it was it was just energy? Maybe it's not even our brains or bodies or some sort of God. It's just energy is aware of itself. It's kind of this complex religious situation. In religious ideology, of course, there's this kind of glitch in the system. And the glitch in the system is said man is made in the image of God, but then when man wonders about the definition, image of God, he can't conceive it. So isn't that strange that we're told we're made in the image of the Creator? The creation is made in the image of the Creator. But the creation, based on the revelation, is also told that it can't fathom it. It's inconceivable. So we are made in the reflection of an inconceivable image. That's the religious conclusion. So what does that mean? That means the person is like, all right, this is all unknown. Am I causing this, or is something else causing this? And if there is something else, it's just about time, guys. Like, you can't really, when I look at religion, I'm like, it's like, can we really like go back and judge Picasso, how he moved the brush? No, it's just art. It's just what happened. And the thing is that, just think about it. Think as if you were in the 6th century right now. I think it's just so natural. For me, religion is a natural development of any civilization, because here's the way of thinking about it, right? I'm not saying religion should be mixed with state and modernity. I'm just saying, when you look at it, it was just like a common thing. The guy was like, who am I? And the guy was like, all right, I came from parents. I was created. So the notion of the personality was something that was created. So a person looked back in the day and they're like, I was created, oh my God. You know? But then the person looked at the cosmos. Then the early philosophical views visited man's mind. And the person was like, wait a minute. So if I was created, how's the world here? And it is not it's far too long that some person would come up after that view and suddenly be like, it's in some sense, how can I tell you, giving a personality to the whole cosmos. And then feeling this personality is beyond the cosmos, so you have to listen to literally like a son. I mean, think about all those, every child probably has experienced, some sort of parental figure. Even if you're an orphan, you've at least seen enough movies. I mean, technically, consciousness-wise, we're all orphans in existence. Everything novelty is literally has no relationship to the past. But like it can't have a relationship to the past, because if it does, then it's the past. So that's why on some level we have to open the ears of the future generations to certain ideas, but at the same time make sure their ears are closed to certain ideas. Some ideas you don't need to hear. I'm telling you, some things you just have to let go. This is the greatest ability of a human being. Even this archer, think about it. You pull back and then you let go. And in life you take and you let go. Or sometimes you let go or sometimes you're given something, and eventually you see it's this constant game of letting go and picking up, letting go and picking up, letting go and picking up. And at the end of it, we end up being just creatures that want to efficiently express ourselves. That's the joy. When you talk to someone, like in these talks, I talk a lot because I'm alone. But when I'm around others, I tend to listen more. Unless they ask a question or something. But I tend to listen more because listening gives you access to see how other minds and eyes are moving in your world. It's like there is no truth like that where it can become a Superman cape. Okay? There's just creatures here. They look at the complex situation. They look at it so long that they see something simple about it. They revert to a simpler platform. Their choices open up. So in life, whenever I've reached a dead end, I just take a few steps back and then there's dead end road or other road. So you just simplify. It's like you got to realize all of phenomenology is either being interpreted through an unknown lens or a known lens, or through the lens of the known and the unknown, or the lens of the simple and the complex. But ultimately, at the core, it's just energy being energy. Some days I wake up and it's like I don't even have an idea on myself. I'm like, all right, I don't have too much expectations on the day. Let's see what happens. You don't know. There was a time where I wanted the day to be my inner realms, and I realized that's foolishness. The outer world has no obligation to your inner realms. It's your eyes are technically your responsibility because nobody has your eyes. When you understand this, then you see why I'm saying after you pursue the path of your own eyes, what you're meant to experience. Trust me, this life has many beautiful stories. They draw you in, but you got to kind of see what you're here for. You got to find that film where you're the main character in, and then you will start caring for your intelligence. And the moment you care for your own intelligence, you will care for the intelligence of your civilization. Because what else is there? Like, what else can you do after you succeed? What else? Let's say 8 billion people, you all succeeded. Everything you desired, you got. What else? It's collective. We are inevitably designed by nature that after we fill up our own stomachs, we don't care for that game anymore, so we go after another game. Life is like games, guys. Literally every day is a game. And I don't mean like a video game, I mean it in the more mystical context of the Leela in Indian tradition, which was the great play of elemental forces. We are right now the periodic table talking. about the periodic table. Doesn't get more metaphysical than that, guys. A physical being wondering about how it's physical, only to realize it has the space to consider otherwise. Why? Why is there imagination? Why does that word exist? Why is there the word mind? Why does that word, out of all the potential words that could have existed, why does that word exist? Why does the word soul exist? Because these are language, the dictionary, its work is not done. Something that the person who wrote the dictionary should have written, like a page in every dictionary. They should write this on the page of all dictionaries. Dear reader, this is how far your civilization has defined these terms. All terms arise from eyes. Eyes work with sensory perception. Sensory perception is being processed. Sensory perception is being processed in a way that is not visible. But the processing is occurring. So the revelation of our soul could pretty much be how we're realizing we are particles being moved by an unknown field. And this field could be beyond time. I feel it is. I mean, like Plato took it so seriously. Well, he was like, somebody asked him, "Hey, Plato, what time is it, man?" You know? And Plato was like, he's like, "Shit, I don't have a sundial." And he's like, "I don't really feel like finding a stick and like putting it in the sand." And he's like, "Time is the moving image of eternity. That's what time it is. It's eternity time." And the guy's like, "Plato, I just wanted to know the time, man. What the, why?" Why open the philosophical horizons this early? I honor the unknown. My allegiance is to the unknown. In my youth, I feared the unknown, and then I realized the known is inspired by the unknown. How hilarious. Like, that was the funniest moment of my life, where I was like, nobody sees my eyes and the emotions. Like, all the internal suffering you can consider, like, inner suffering means resistance to the world. So your mind, you can literally have an object, it's the friction of your mind. It's literally the friction your inner realms cause on the outer realms, right? An angry, egotistical person, they don't realize it, but they're literally creating an intense friction. And friction is when the surfaces are like, even though you see like, okay, whatever, like I'm sliding this cup of coffee on this table, okay? So at some level, materialistic level, the back of the bottom of this cup is a surface, and this surface isn't a perfectly pure surface. When we micro zoom into it, it's like you can see like a knife blade. It's like zigzaggy. Do you know what I mean? So what that means is that the inner realms aren't perfect, the outer realms aren't perfect. Your communication is like the medium between the two surfaces that have a friction, right? So if you like put butter, if I put butter on this table, or if I literally, here's the thing, literally this coffee cup, if I spill a little bit of the coffee fluid on the table and then I move the coffee cup on that fluid, the friction of the coffee cup would be different. So man's mind can't really control the world, both the inner realm and outer realm, but it can choose the balance in between. You can choose how your attention pilots the friction of your inner realm on your outer realm. Now, something about the inner realm and outer realm which distinguishes the maturity of the eyes in this plane of existence. Just a second, folks. I need a breather. If you want, again, the outer realms to be like your inner realms, you don't see the world. You see your world. If you let the outer realms pilot or define your inner realms, then you become a creature of no free will. So your savior becomes your hope of how the world will change you. So when you see the outer realms become more real than the inner realms, there's no such thing as free will. When the inner realms become more real than the outer realms, there's so much free will. I pilot in my inner realms. And I play with three-dimensional space in my inner realms. Because the inner realms, there's the advantage of the light in the room. There's a sort of fate control advantage in the inner realms. So for most people, they feel like just because they need to visualize, imagine if somebody told you visualize a cup of coffee floating in the air in front of you, like a meter in the air in front of you, okay? Just imagine a cup of coffee floating in the air, okay? Imagine it, visualize it. Now that cup of coffee, most people think that just because they imagine something, it has to stay there. They're treating their imagination like a chalkboard when it comes to visualization. They shouldn't treat it like a chalkboard. They should treat their imagination like a surfing board, where your balance, the simple mere whim of your attention in your inner realms can evoke your nature. You know what that means? That means the yogi who's meditating in the cave, somebody could come and tell him, Shiva, just whisper, and the yogi's in samadhi. And that yogi literally will have a neurological reaction to that concept. Therefore, their inner realm, suddenly Shiva may be evoked in their inner realms. I did something which was kind of foolish in my youth. I was maybe like 11. And I'm not proud of it. It was like I didn't have the wisdom to know. But I did it. I don't know why. And my parents told me to go wake up my cousin, who was a couple years younger than me. And I was staying at our house in Iran, and I'm like 11, you know. I have a twin brother, you know. So he was sleeping in my brother's room, which was bigger. And he had, what do you call it? He had pretty much like there was some sort of blanket thing, you know, on the ground, you know. So it was some kind of like semi-cushion, you know. And not semi-cushion, I'm not saying it. Like imagine 6 to 7 blankets layered over one another. Like that was the mattress. So my cousin's sleeping, and I'm this 11-year-old version of me told to go wake up my cousin. And I go in the room, and I don't know why, but in that moment I just thought of that and I did it. And I start clapping. Literally like this. I just start clapping to see how many claps does it take to get my cousin to wake up. Now I advise anybody, never disturb anyone in sleep. Treat sleep as if they've gone into the temple to meditate. Okay? So silence is crucial. That was a mistake. That 11-year-old version of me, if I had a time machine, I would go instantly stop myself from ever doing that. You know? If I had a time machine. But in that moment I did that. Eventually my cousin wakes up and he says, in the dream, he's hearing clapping in his dream. And I never forget that, even though I some sense like regret doing that, right? But anyways, it was insight. It had an explorative advantage. I noticed that a mere sound cannot change the inner realms. This is why I'm telling people, don't ever, like I frown upon it. I mean, people have free will to do anything, but I frown upon this. Whoever listens to these talks, don't put headphones on and fall asleep to them. It's unnecessary. It's unnecessary to hear a speech unconsciously, because then you're leaving your subconscious to process it, and it's not. Let me tell you, silence is your sacred space of your mind. I go towards silence and stillness. I've even like, I personally I don't drink, but there was a time I would, and I remember anytime I would drink, there would be two options. It was a coin flip for me. Either I would become incredibly energized and with the crowd and just incredible good time, positive vibes, or my inner realms will begin going towards, like, I would either walk towards the light or towards the darkness, right? And anytime that would happen, I would have to get out of the crowd. Even with normal friends, like the whole crowd were like floor hopping. It was like back in the it was a long time ago anyways. I was living in London, Ontario. And I reached a level of intoxication where I doubted my own ability, then I doubted my memories, then I reached a certain point where I didn't give myself enough permission to have worth to myself. Like it would take me to a mind where I couldn't allow myself in that moment to see myself. You know, something that people don't realize, your eyes are not just from your biological eyes. They're your whole moment. You empathize with all the content in your moment. That moment where in Castaway, the guys dropped the volleyball face, Wilson, that was an emotional moment. When I was a kid, that brought tears to my eyes. But on some level, I'm like, this guy's crying over a volleyball? Like, it's like, be a man, bro. I'm joking. But I'm saying, like it was an intense moment because the person had preserved their humanity through that idol. Like, you can say idol worship perhaps started because there was loneliness. Who knows? I feel like there was idol worship, then we moved on to language worship, and it's scary, it's freaky. To this day, it's still language worship. That means every generation of human beings that are born and they don't update the systems they're living in, all the future generations are like, shame on you, man. Shame. Because that's the point. Our energy either has an effect. Let's say you cause an activity, you move. All right, your movement has a meaning to you. It also has a meaning to others. As I'm giving this talk, I'm also hearing it while you guys are hearing it, right? But I'm simultaneously hearing it and saying it, you know? So for me, sometimes giving these talks literally feels like like back in the day when the teacher would ask me to go solve a question on the board, you know? It would be like a situation where you go there, there's a board, and everybody is looking at this empty board. And then there is just what is being drawn. So for me, the linguistic simulation, the meaning, all these words you hear, I consider them more as paintings than as any sort of meaning. Because that's all that language can be. Because words, within them, there is the image. They harbor worlds, which are images. And an emotion is an incredible multidimensional collision. That means an emotional person, if you pay attention anytime, I've personally noticed this in myself, anytime I've become emotional, I've noticed another sense of self there. And we shouldn't have this premature reaction in psychological circles to sanity and insanity. Let me tell you, it's unknown variables. It's literally everybody is a mathematical equation that we have to, for years, study to figure out, and we don't have that much time. So that we are engaging with the social level. So I want you to feel, as a human being, that it's like when you step outside, when you're not alone with yourself, you are in a social matrix. You are in a social evolutionary process. That means if you're a human being, like in Japan, I heard something very savage. there was this documentary that said in Japan, there's 1 out of 3 men dies alone. And I was like, yo, back in the day, everybody died alone. But I looked at it, and what it was that there are some people who live such solitary lives, and not that it's wrong. There's no morality. I'm not bringing morality into this. I'm just talking about the design of the event. Okay, the same way we can speak about the design of the engine of a car, we can also speak about the design of an incident, event, story, whatever. The designer's will surpasses any sort of storyhood. So in Japan, there's men who are just dying of loneliness. And what does that mean? That means it's not just, I wouldn't even say a man, because in loneliness, you are technically nothing. You're not anything in an other mind. It's like when you're alone in a forest, let's say when you're alone in a room or anywhere, you have to confront your mind. And so many people don't realize it, that you can walk internally. You can walk behind your eyes, but you don't walk as a self in a world. You walk as the world projecting the self. So study your mind. It is a storehouse of everything your eyes have witnessed so far. You can access it through coagulation, or you can micro zoom into some sort of order of it. I have certain relationships that only through time I built with my inner realms. What does that mean? That means every day I pretty much woke up and I'm like, what is this? And then I slept. And then I woke up again. What is this? I slept. I woke up again. What is this? And then I realized it is not a this. It is not an object. It is not a subject. It's kind of like a collective movement where we have an individual awareness in. One of the most fascinating teachings that I got from nature was that I was in Edward's garden. I was sitting on this bench, and I have this. I mean, not recently. Recently, I've been really busy, but I have this habit where I go towards nature, where I feel nature just doesn't judge you. You know, like that's why pets have a healing value, because your pet doesn't really judge you. Your pet's just looking. I mean, cats could be argued, but I'm saying like the animal doesn't think you're a good person or a bad person. So there's no pressure. So when you go in nature, like these yogis did, they would go in a space where there's no pressure from the external environment. So they're left with their inner realms. They would look at their inner realms, discover its nature, and then they would live a life. Or they would live beyond life, where literally in their legends they would self-immolate, not like with actual fire, not arsony, but like they would go reach a level of being where their Mahasamadhi was an energetic infusion. They would literally evaporate into energy of higher dimensions, and they wouldn't exist as a person anymore. Like that was that was the Vedic level of going about it, you know. So anyways, guys, I'm going to end the talk here. Is the self inside reality? Is reality inside the self? Is the concept of the inside actually the self? Is reality even real when the void is here? Like, there's so many questions here. This talk, I'm going to encourage the listeners to give their own answer and their own view and their own analysis. And let us try to wonder, as an interesting question, let us not deny materialism. Let us just ask, what else is there? That what if is the greatest thing. Anything anybody has told me, anytime I've asked for advice or anything for anyone, everything they've told me has just come across as one parallel way of looking at the moment. That's just the eyes of that person. And I realize this. This is the advantage of thinking for yourself. That means you looking at the problem and taking the problem head on. Just wonder. Don't judge your capability. Just try and see what is the feedback, and then build off that feedback in advance. So 2 questions for the viewers to respond. anybody who ever throughout time who hears this. Is the self inside reality? And the other question is, if there was something beyond materialism, if the world was multidimensional, what would that mean in our way of defining matter? So how would we define matter in a multidimensional reality? So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste. The fruits of the mastery of the inner realms and the outer realms is a simultaneous witness. That witness is void. Don't fear the void. Look at it. Look at what's looking at the one looking. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Blessings.